Spending money when we are symptomatic has become so common that some doctors are using it as a screening question when diagnosing bipolar disorder. In fact, a survey of nearly 6,000 people showed that up to 90% of people will spend more during periods of poor mental health. Although the majority of people spend while hypomanic or manic, some of us will also engage in comfort spending when we are depressed. It creates a vicious cycle that's hard to break. Over the years, I've had countless requests to talk about manic spending. The main reason why I haven't is that it's a really hard topic to address. It's not like I can just tell you to cut up your credit cards and call it a day. It's more complicated than that. I know firsthand how strong the compulsion is to spend when I'm symptomatic. My mind will do these mental gymnastics to convince myself that the purchase is justified, that I have enough money, that I won't regret it later. I can look around my house right now and see things that I bought or hobbies I started that are just gathering dust. Many of these purchases haunt me and can reinforce my depression. Like I said, it's a vicious cycle. So why does this happen? It actually makes perfect sense when we look at the symptoms of bipolar: impulsivity, risk-taking, disinhibition, delusions of grandiose ambitions, no fear of consequences, feeling overgenerous. It's like the perfect storm for being reckless with our savings. Also, many of us chase the mania by the rush we get from buying something new. When I'm feeling down, buying a new toy is a nice distraction from the pain. It elevates my mood. I used to call it retail therapy, when in all reality, it was a very problematic way to cope. All that said, today I'd like to discuss 12 ways that we can avoid spending too much when we're symptomatic. My primary focus is going to be on manic spending, since that's when most of us overextend ourselves financially. If there's a tip you have that wasn't included in this video, please join the conversation in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. All right, let's get to it. Number one, I'll preface this one by saying it's one of the most challenging tips I have, yet it's probably the most effective. This would be to prevent mania by treating the illness first. If we only spend when we are symptomatic, it goes without saying that the fewer episodes we have, the less we spend. It's that simple. Or is it? For some of us, finding the right treatment can take months or even years. Our treatment needs can also change as we get older. I'm not saying this to discourage you, it's just the reality of where we're at with modern medicine. The goal is to constantly seek a higher quality of life. Treating bipolar is an evolving process and usually requires tiny adjustments along the way, with the goal of remaining stable for longer periods of time. When in doubt, treat the illness first. Number two, go cash only. I know it's a pain sometimes, but hear me out. With mobile phone payments, card chip readers, and some places not even taking cash, it makes it way too easy to spend our money. We just swipe and it's gone. It also makes it way harder to know how much we've spent and how much we have left. At the beginning of the month, take out the amount of cash you intend to spend on bills that month, food too. Put it in envelopes labeled accordingly. Figure out how much you can spend on personal stuff and make a weekly envelope with your allowance in it. Don't forget to put a little bit into savings. Every time I spend my allowance and want to dip into my car payment, I know if I pull money out of that envelope, I'll default on a very important payment. It prevents me from accessing funds that are specifically set aside for more important things. Moving on to number three, use a representative payee service, especially if you're receiving disability or Social Security benefits. A payee service will receive your money and use the funds to pay for specific needs like housing, utilities, food, and medical expenses. Whatever money is left over gets put into a savings account you can't access unless you contact the payee. It's a phenomenal way to not only make sure your bills are paid on time, but to also slowly build up a savings. Most payee services charge around $50 to $100 a month to do all of this. It's totally worth it. Just do a Google search for payee services in your area. Number four, Delay, delay, delay. A lot of manic spending is spontaneous. If you have your credit card info saved in your phone or computer for online purchases, it's way too easy to spend. It's just one click away. Consider removing all of your saved payment info so you have to enter it all in manually. You can do something similar by using a prepaid gift card. Having to manually reload it gives you some time to reconsider a purchase. Another thing you can do is cancel Amazon Prime. Free 2-day shipping feeds that desire for immediate gratification. For my partner and I, we have an agreement that for every $100 I want to spend, I have to wait a week before I make the purchase. That alone has made a big difference. A funny tip someone shared with me is to freeze your credit card in a pitcher of water in the freezer. You can't use it until it thaws out. All that said, delay, delay, delay. Now for number 5. Track your spending just like you track your moods so you can see how they correlate. I typically don't overspend when I'm stable or just starting to get symptomatic. It's once I cross a certain threshold that I lose control of my choices. As Benjamin Franklin famously said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If I haven't slept well in a couple of days, I'm on high alert. If my partner notices that I'm elevated and actually says something about it, I take that very seriously. Part of the illness is not knowing when I'm in trouble. There's a very small window of time before I'm too symptomatic to make good choices. Preventing fires in the first place is better than fighting them later. Number 6, surrender financial control, at least until trust is rebuilt. Many of us have made financial decisions that impacted or even devastated the lives of our families and partners. This causes our loved ones to live in fear, and it destroys trust. It's a big reason why many relationships end. Before things get completely out of control, consider turning all financial responsibility over to your spouse or a trusted loved one. This includes things like credit cards, checks, and even removing your name from bank accounts if necessary. I know it's frustrating for everyone involved, but if that's what it takes to save the relationship and restore financial stability, then so be it. It also has to be a mutual decision because it puts extra burdens on your loved ones. Try to find a balance. Maybe offer to help with a different responsibility to help carry the load. Number 7, dial a buddy. If you have a good friend who not only knows you well, but who's also comfortable being brutally honest with you, consider asking them for their opinion, especially with big purchases. For example, if you want to spend $5,000 on a diamond-encrusted fidget spinner or finance a $50,000 truck, your friend might advise you otherwise. Come up with a plan before this happens. Let your friend know why you might be calling them in the future so they're somewhat prepared. That's the easy part. The hard part is going to be listening to them. A good friend will always have your best interest in mind, so their opinion is highly worth considering. Maybe call more than one friend so there's a consensus. Tip number 8, enlist the help of a professional who specializes in CBT or DBT. These are both forms of therapy that have shown great promise in helping with impulse control. CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, focuses on exposing the relationship between thoughts and behaviors. DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy, is like a combination of CBT and mindfulness practices. It helps with things like managing emotions, stress, and impulsive behavior. Now for tip number 9. I made a video a while back called The Bipolar Time Machine, and it's really applicable to what we're discussing today. Here's the gist of it. When you're feeling stable, and I emphasize the word stable, record a video for your future symptomatic self. In the video, you can remind yourself of the financial devastation from a previous episode. Maybe you can plead with yourself to not get into another spontaneous hobby, or to avoid touching your savings for non-emergency purposes. You know yourself better than anyone, so say what you must. Here's the catch. You have to be willing to watch the video when you're symptomatic. Maybe give the video to a loved one so they can share it with you if they notice signs of trouble. Speaking of loved ones, tip number 10 is for friends and family. Know when to throw in the towel and get help. If we are in crisis and our spending is going to cause us to lose our home, job, or spouse, it's time to consider hospitalization. And I know this one isn't easy. Trying to convince someone to get help when they can't see there's a problem is a hard sell. My advice would be to come up with a crisis plan and agreements ahead of time during a period of stability. This involves quite a bit of trust. I have to trust that when my loved one says it's time to go to the hospital, that means I'm in deep shit and I need to go to the hospital. Without a plan, it's like the blind leading the blind. Tip number 11, familiarize yourself and others with your spending triggers. Do seasonal related episodes contribute to holiday spending? What about promotional sales like Amazon Prime Day or Black Friday? Is the casino or mall a problematic place to be? Whatever the trigger, identifying it gives you a starting point to cope with it. We've made it to my final tip today, which is good because this video is getting a bit long. Tip number 12 is card management. Credit cards are a major issue, even for people that don't have bipolar disorder. Just to give you an idea, the average American adult has around $22,000 in debt. That doesn't even include mortgages. If you manic spend, owning a credit card is like a recovering alcoholic owning a bottle of tequila. It's just a bad idea. If you feel you must have one for, quote, emergencies, give it to a loved one to hold on to, or put the card in your spouse's name. I haven't owned a credit card in over a decade, but I can still get into trouble with my debit card. So I called my bank and had them put a daily spending limit on it. Proper card management has been essential to my financial survival. I really hope something I said today resonated with you. Please remember that it's not one thing that's going to fix manic spending. It's a combination of things working together that increase the chances of someone being more financially responsible. If you have questions or need some extra support, there's a link in the video description where I can be reached directly. Take extra good care of yourselves, and I'll be back here soon with more Polar Warrior videos. Stay well.